Happy day to all. Today we are going to start chapter 8, How do organisms reproduce? Topics to be covered: introduction, what is a reproduction, why is a reproduction necessary, types of reproduction, asexual reproduction, which consists of fission, budding, regeneration, and vegetative propagation, and in sexual reproduction, in that takes place in plants as well as in human beings, the reproductive health, family planning, etc. So this is the introduction chart where you can see two parts. One side you have the plant kingdom or the plants, and the other side it is the animal kingdom. So seeing this picture, we know that each and every organism, they have their own capacity or capability to produce their own young ones. So what is reproduction? The process by which living organisms produce new organisms similar to themselves. And in the picture itself, you can see lioness and the cub, sheep and lamb, goat and kid, mare and then the colt, and the different young ones you can see on the right side also. So why is a reproduction necessary? So reproduction is necessary to retain a particular species of living organism. That is, during this time, transmission of characters from one generation to the next generation happens. And also, when it becomes the sexual reproduction, variation results, and this variation lead to the origin of new species. So we are going to talk about reproduction. So the relationship to inheritance and variation. What do you mean by inheritance? It is the genetic character getting transferred from generation after generation, from parents to to their offsprings. So here you can see a man. So when we are going into deep, these human beings, they are formed of cell, and cell is the basic structural and functional unit of all living organism. And when we move again into deep, we could see that it is the nucleus that we could see, where it nucleus pays, or the function of nucleus is to aid reproduction or production or division, forming new organisms. And we know that inside the nucleus we have we could see thread like structure. We call it as a chromatin network, and during the process of the cell division, it condenses to form chromatids or these chromosomes. And each chromosomes, they contain, or they have 23 pairs of chromosomes in human cell, human body. So we know that each and every character that have been expressed in our body is being taken care by these genes. What is so I was just talking, when sexual reproduction takes place, it leads to variation. What is the need for variation? So accumulation of variations over a period of time give rise to new species, and also it maintains, or it helps in the survival of a species over time. And next, we want to pass on to the types of reproduction. So earlier itself, we have given in the introduction part that it is of asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. These are the two types of reproduction. So what is asexual? So asexual reproduction, it involves a single parent. That is, a single parent is needed to reproduce the new organisms, where no the sex is not been involved. Next comes the sexual reproduction, which involves two parents, where fusion between male and female gametes give rise to the new organisms. Here, the sex is involved. So first we will see what is asexual reproduction. So the mode of reproduction in which new individuals are formed from a single parent, and the new individuals, they will be identical to the parent, and the significance is the faster mode of reproductive method comes the asexual reproduction. So what are the different types of asexual reproduction? So the asexual reproduction, it consists of fission, budding, regeneration, fragmentation, spore formation, and the vegetative propagation. And we are going into each and every topic. We will see what is fission, what is budding, and so on. So the first one is fission. What is a fission? Fission means a separation or a splitting. So when an organism split to form two or more new individuals, we call it as a fission. So why I said two or more? Here also fission are of two types. It is binary fission and multiple fission. The term itself say binary means bi means two. So an organism getting divided into two, we call it as a binary fission. Multiple means more than two organisms will be formed. So here the picture shows the binary fission in amoeba. So you can see the nucleus at the center, that elongation of the nucleus takes place, and this elongation, where the elongation point take place, the cell membrane also try to develop a groove, and that groove deepens. By the time what happens, the nucleus divides into two daughter nuclei, and then this groove deepens and then form two independent dividing the single mother cell into two daughter cells. So this is how binary fission takes place in amoeba, where two new individuals are formed. The nucleus divides only once, and then the unicellular organisms like amoeba, paramecium, euglena, bacteria, etc., they undergo this binary fission. So this is the binary fission that takes place in leishmania. So here also you can see A shows the complete organism, and then the B part you can see the groove deepening towards the center part, and the slowly at the that is hardening of the nucleus part, elongation which results in the separation, and then you can see the groove deepens, dividing leishmania into two daughter leishmania. Next, it is multiple fission. So before going on to the multiple fission, I would like to tell you that this binary fission usually takes place during favorable condition. So what are the favorable conditions? The favorable conditions, it might be sufficient amount of water, proper temperature maintenance, not too hot or not too cold, and such condition, these unicellular organisms, they attain or they perform binary fission. So next we will see what is multiple fission, where many new individuals are formed, where the nucleus divides repeatedly and takes place during unfavorable condition. So here I want to stress what is unfavorable condition, that is a scarcity of water, or extreme temperature variation, or extreme cold or extreme hot condition, which lead to the so during this time what takes place during the unfavorable condition, where these organisms, they may not be able to perform the binary fission, they produce a cyst surrounding the organism. So the cell membrane will be covered by a calcareous cyst, and it can this cyst can withstand any drastic climatic conditions. And inside that, they have the cell as well as the nucleus. And slowly, this nucleus starts dividing with a bit of cytoplasm. Many numerous thousands of that is daughter cells are being formed inside that cyst wall or inside the cell, and it has been protected by this cyst. So as a result, when favorable season comes, this cyst wall will break open and liberate the young daughter cells, and they lead an independent life. So here the multiple fission, it takes place in amoeba, plasmodium, and many algae. So next, it is the budding that takes place in the yeast as well as a hydra. The picture itself shows how hydra, there are particular, that is in hydra, at the base part, the particular tissue level, a small bud-like structure arises, and this bud produces small tentacles at the end and then start its growth. And a time will come where this bud get detached from the mother hydra, and then when it falls on a suitable substratum, it leads an independent life. If it is a yeast, so the bud begins to form on the parent cell, and this the nucleus divides, elongates, and then divides into two, where bud also receive a copy of the nucleus. And the constriction that is formed between the bud and then the cell deepens, dividing or separating the daughter cell from the parent cell. And this budding, it produces chains of cells. And here the new individual is formed as an outgrowth of parent in hydra, whereas in yeast we know it as a bud, and then it gets separated from the parent cell. These daughter separates away, and then the parent continues to exist. Examples for budding, it is a hydra as well as yeast. Next, it is the fragmentation. Fragmentation, the term itself say having parts or bits. So the parent here, what takes place? The parent breaks into multiple pieces on maturity, and each of which will give rise to a new individual. So here you can see the fragmentation that takes place in Spirogyra, where it is a Spirogyra strand. You can see when it gets split, it can be an accidentally that is the string or the filament gets detached from the parent filament. So each filament will develop into a new individual, and this type of fragmentation is seen in simple multicellular organisms. Next is regeneration. So if a parent is cut or broken into multiple pieces, that is from the head part, a middle part, and then the tail part, each part will give rise to a new individual. And this too can be an accidental process. And some of the animals that undergoes a regeneration, they are hydra, flatworms, as well as tapeworms. Next, it is the spore formation. So spore formation, you would have learned in lower classes also, in that is the formation of a new individual by germination of spores. And what are these spores? The spores are unicellular bodies in the parent that are capable of growing into a new individual. So in bread mold, if we see, we can see fungi. They perform spore formation, where the full body, we call it as the sporangium, which produces spores, and they depend on some of the food source like bread and so on, where they develop the net-like structure downward as root-like structure. We call it as the hyphae, and then they grow. And it can be white mold as well as the black molds that are present on the bread. So next, it is a vast topic. It is vegetative propagation, or otherwise we can call it as asexual reproduction, which takes place in plants. Most of the plants, their mode of asexual reproduction is by vegetative propagation. What do you mean by vegetative propagation? Vegetative propagation, it is the responsibility of the plant body, any plant body. It can be a stem, it can be a root, it can be a leaf, any part of the body that gives a rise to a new plant. So here what takes place? The plant part gets detached from the parent and form a new plant. So first, there are two types of vegetative propagation. The first one is natural vegetative propagation, and the second one, it is the artificial vegetative propagation. So natural vegetative reproduction, it takes place in root, stem, and leaves, whereas artificial vegetative propagation, it has been taken care by cutting, layering, grafting, etc. So we will see what takes place by roots. So here you can see the images of a sweet potato, then roots of dahlia, guava. They are responsible for perpetuating their next generation by using roots. So buds develop in thick, fleshy root, which later, when put into the soil, develops into a new plant. So examples, they are guava, sweet potato, and dahlia are some of the examples of root vegetative propagative, that is natural way of vegetative propagation by roots. Next, it is by stem, mostly underground stems. So here we can see on onion tuber, that is potatoes, as well as buds are being the corm, and then the rhizome. Uh, all these things, what takes place? So a small bud-like structure arises on the stem part. When these buds are cut and then placed in the soil, or if it falls on the soil, it produces a new plant. So modified bud, that is the onion bulb. So it contains an underground stem which is reduced in size, and the leaves are swollen with stored food. And examples are daffodils, tulips, onion, etc. And next part is by leaves. Buds are formed along the leaf margins, which later give rise to a new plant. So here you can see the picture of a leaf, a bryophyllum leaf, uh, which shows how the buds are formed on the margins of the leaf, and when it falls on a suitable soil or substratum, it develops into a new plant.